Persepolis, Prspls, Ancient Persian, Parsa, New Persian, Romanized, Takht-i-Jamshid, lit. Throne of Jamshid, 330, was the ceremonial capital of the 550 Achaemenid Empire. Located on the Mavdasht Plain, surrounded by the Zagros Mountains of southern Iran. Modern-day Shiraz is located 60 kilometers (37 miles) southwest of the ruins of Persepolis. The earliest remains of Persepolis date back to 515 BC. It exemplifies the Achaemenid architectural style. UNESCO declared the ruins of Persepolis a World Heritage Site in 1979. The Royal Palace. The complex is elevated on a walled platform, with 5 palaces, or halls of varying sizes, and a majestic entrance. The function of Persepolis is still unclear. It was not one of the largest cities in Persia, much less the rest of the empire, but it appeared to be a large ceremonial complex that was only occupied seasonally. It is still not completely clear where the king's personal residence actually is. Until a recent challenge, most archaeologists have argued that it was primarily used to celebrate Nowruz, the Persian New Year, which is held at the spring equinox, and is still an important annual celebration in modern Iran. Iranian nobles and tributaries of the empire came to give gifts to the king, as depicted in the reliefs of the stairs. It is also not clear what permanent structures lie outside the palace complex. It might be better to think of Persepolis as simply a complex rather than a city, in the normal sense. The compound was taken by the armies of Alexander the Great in 330 BC, and soon after the wooden parts were completely destroyed by fire. Territory of the kingdom. An inscription left in 311 AD by the Sasanian prince Shapur Sakanshah, son of Hormizd II, refers to the site as Sadstun, meaning 100 pillars. Because medieval Persians attributed the site to Jamshid, a king of Iranian mythology, the site is called Takht-i-Jamshid Persian, Takht-i-Jamshid, Takht-i-Jamshid, literally meaning throne of Jamshid. Another name given to the site in the medieval period was Ahelmena, literally meaning 40 towers. The site has a terrace of 125,000 square meters, partly constructed artificially and partly cut from the mountain, with its eastern side resting on Mount Ramat. The other 3 sides are formed by retaining walls, the height of which varies with the slope of the ground. Up from 5 to 13 meters, 16 to 43 ft, on the west side is a double staircase. From there, it gently tilted upwards. To create a flat terrace, the basin is filled with earth and heavy stones, which are held together with metal clips. History according to archaeologists. Archaeological evidence suggests that the earliest remains of Persepolis date back to 515 BC. André Goddard, the French archaeologist who excavated Persepolis in the early 1930s, believes that Cyrus the Great chose the location of Persepolis, but that Darius I built the terraces and palace. The inscriptions on these buildings support the belief that they were built by Darius. With Darius I, the scepter was passed on to a new branch of the royal house. Persepolis may have been the capital of Persia during his reign. However, the city's location in a remote and mountainous area made it an inconvenient place to live for the rulers of the empire. The actual capitals of the country are Susa, Babylon and Ecbatana. This may be why the Greeks did not recognize the city until Alexander the Great took it and plundered it. Building. The construction of the Persepolis Darius I was carried out parallel to the construction of the Susa Palace. According to Jean R. Garthwaite, the Palace of Susa served as Daria's model for Persepolis. Darius I ordered the construction of the Apadana and Council Hall Tripylon or Three-Gate, as well as the main treasury of the empire and its surroundings. This was completed during the reign of his son, Xerxes I. Further construction of the buildings on the terraces continued until the fall of the Achaemenid Empire. According to the Encyclopaedia Britannica, the Greek historian Ctesias mentions that Darius I's tomb was on a cliff that could be reached by ropes. Around 519 BC, the construction of the wide staircase began. The staircase was originally planned to be the main entrance to the terrace 20 meters (66 feet) above the ground. The double staircase, known as the Stairs of the Controversy, was constructed symmetrically on the west side of the Great Wall. The 111 steps measure 6.9 meters (23 feet) wide, with a tread of 31 centimeters (12 inches) and a height of 10 centimeters (3.9 inches). Originally, the ladder was believed to have been built to allow nobles to ascend on horseback. New theories, however, suggest that the shallow rungs allowed visiting dignitaries to maintain a regal appearance as they ascended. The top of the stairs led to a small courtyard on the northeast side of the terrace, opposite the Gate of All Nations. Diodorus Siculus wrote that Persepolis had 3 walls with fortifications, all of which had towers to provide sheltered space for defense personnel. The first wall is 7 meters (23 feet) high, the second 14 meters (46 feet), and the third wall, which covers all 4 sides, is 27 meters (89 feet) high, although there are no walls inside. Modern era. Destruction. From Stolze's investigation, it appears that at least one of these castles, the castle built by Xerxes I, has traces of being destroyed by fire. The locality described by Diodorus Siculus after Cleitarchus relates specifically to historic Persepolis, for example, supported by mountains to the east. It is believed that the fire that destroyed Persepolis started in the palace of Hadith, which was the residence of Xerxes I, and spread throughout the city. It is unclear whether the fire was an accident or a deliberate act of revenge for the burning of the Acropolis of Athens during the Second Persian invasion of Greece. Many historians argue that, while Alexander's army celebrated with a symposium, they decided to take revenge against the Persians. If so, then the destruction of Persepolis could be an accident and a case of revenge. The fire may also have had the political purpose of destroying the iconic symbol of the Persian monarchy, which may have been the focus of Persian resistance. Several later Greek and Roman records, including Arrian, Diodorus Siculus and Quintus Curtius Rufus, explain that the arson was the idea of Thais, the mistress of General Alexander Ptolemy I Soter, and possibly Alexander himself. He is said to have suggested it during a very drunken celebration. According to some accounts, to avenge the destruction of Greek holy places. He was originally from Athens, and here Alexander himself lit the fire. The destruction of the kingdom. In 316 BC, Persepolis was still the capital of Persia as a province of the Great Macedonian Empire. See Diod. Sheesh, 21 Seek, 46, possibly after Jerome of Cardia, who lived about 326. The city must have gradually declined in the course of time. The lower city at the foot of the imperial city might last longer, but the remains of the Achaemenid ruins bear witness to its ancient glory. It was very likely that the country's main city, or at least its districts, had always been in this neighborhood. Around 200 BCE, the city of Estac, 5 kilometers north of Persepolis, was the seat of local governors. From there, the foundations of the Second Great Persian Empire were laid, and there Estac acquired special importance as a center of priestly wisdom and orthodoxy. The Sasanian kings had covered the rock face of this environment, and even some of the Achaemenid ruins, with their sculptures and inscriptions. They themselves must have been built for the most part there, though never on the same scale of grandeur as their ancient predecessors. The Romans knew as little about Estac as the Greeks did about Persepolis, despite the fact that the Sasanians maintained 400 years of ties, friendly or hostile, to the empire. At the time of the Muslim invasion of Persia, Estac offered desperate resistance. It was still a place of considerable importance in the 1st century Islam, although its grandeur was quickly eclipsed by the new metropolis of Shiraz. By the 10th century, Estac had dwindled into insignificance, as can be seen from the descriptions of Estacri, the natives c. 950 and al-Muqaddasi c. 985. Over the following centuries, Estac gradually declined, until it ceased to exist as a city. Seven. Ruins. The ruins of a number of colossal buildings are on the terrace. They are all made of dark grey marble. Their 15 pillars stood intact. 3 more pillars have been rebuilt since 1970. Some of the buildings were never completed. F. Stolz has shown that some of the masons' waste remains. So far, more than 30,000 inscriptions have been recovered from explorations of Persepolis, which are small and compact in terms of size and text, but they are the most valuable documents of the Achaemenid period. Based on inscriptions currently held in the United States, most of the time indicate that during the time of Persepolis, wage earners were paid. Since the time of Pietro della Valle, it cannot be denied that these ruins represent Persepolis that was captured and partly destroyed by Alexander the Great. Behind the complex in Persepolis, there are 3 tombs hewn from the rock on the hillside. Its facade, one of which is incomplete, is rich in reliefs. About 13 kilometers NNE, across the Pulvar River, a perpendicular rock wall emerges, through which 4 similar tombs are cut at a considerable height from the valley floor. Modern Iranians call this place Naqshi Rustam, relief Rustam, from the Sasanian relief below the opening, which they consider to be a representation of the mythical hero Rostam. From these statues it can be concluded that the inhabitants of these 7 tombs are kings. An inscription on one of the tombs states it was from Darius I, about whom Ctesias relates that his grave was in front of a rock, and could only be reached by rope. Ctesias further mentions, regarding a number of Persian kings, whether their bodies were taken to Persia, or that they died there. That's a brief history of the Kingdom of Persepolis quoted from Wikipedia.org. Hope it is useful. Thank you.